Hey everyone, welcome to the video. This one we're going to recap week 8 of the NFL season, go over my main lineup that I used, my cash game rankings, what went right, what went wrong. So I always like to be transparent every single week. Then we'll look ahead at week 9 of the NFL season, just go over some initial thoughts and reactions, and we'll try to build a lineup together, and then we'll go from there. So before we continue, if you could leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out, and I really appreciate it. You can also follow me on Twitter at ChrisPinell16. And if you're interested in the spreadsheet I build every single week, ownership, projections, all the stats you need, and my cheat sheet and my Slack chat, links available in the description below for my Patreon, and let's get into the video. So first off, let's go over my cash game rankings as we do every single week, and my numero uno was Mr. Chalk Deshaun Watson. He came in at 50% owned, which is the highest owned quarterback on the slate, and he did fine. I probably hoped for a little bit more from his price tag, but he still got 27 fantasy points, which is obviously great. It was 27 for 39, 279 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Also had 10 rushing attempts for 46 yards, which we love his rushing upside as well. So he's my number one guy versus Oakland, who just continues to get killed by quarterbacks, and he had a pretty good game versus them again. So if you played Deshaun Watson, you weren't not happy. You weren't like over the moon excited, but you were pretty happy about playing Deshaun Watson. Ryan Tannehill, he was my cheap guy of the week, because I usually tend to like to go cheap at quarterback if I can. Sometimes we can't, but Ryan Tannehill did open up as a nice option versus Tampa Bay, who really struggles with quarterbacks. He ended up putting up 19.42 points, which at 5,100, you will take that all day. He was really low in the yardage department. He only had 193 yards. We did get you 3 touchdowns and no turnovers. So Ryan Tannehill, if you played him, you were pretty darn happy. Matthew Stafford, he had another great game. He's been doing very well recently. He had 27 fantasy points, so he's right on par with Deshaun Watson. He was 1,000 cheaper, so if you played Matthew Stafford, you were very ecstatic. He had 342 yards and 3 touchdowns and a pick. So Matthew Stafford had a great game. Russell Wilson, he's someone I got a lot lower on as the week went on. Matt Ryan got ruled out, which made me think that the Seahawks were going to get a lead early, which means Russell Wilson doesn't really not have to put up a big game to win this game, which ended up becoming true. They got up pretty big, pretty fast there, and Russell Wilson still tossed 2 touchdowns, really had 15 fantasy points. So really wasn't a great game out of Russell Wilson. So if you played him, you're probably pretty disappointed, especially at his price tag. And then Jared Goff, he had a pretty good game in London. He ended up having 25 fantasy points, had a nice long touchdown to Cooper Kupp, had 372 yards on 17 completions, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. So yeah, pretty good game out of Jared Goff. Not a lot of people were on him. He was 6,800. So Jared Goff ended up working out really well. As for the running back position, Latavius Murray was the obvious play of the week. He was 74% owned in cash games, and he just went absolutely ballistic versus the Cardinals. You know, he's a big home favorite in a great Saints offense. He had 21 rushing attempts, 102 yards, a touchdown, 9 catches, 55 yards, 1 receiving touchdown, very Alvin Kamara-like. So if you play Latavius Murray, like pretty much everyone in the world did, yeah, you were pretty happy playing Latavius Murray. Chris Carson, I feel like he did pretty much all of his work in the first half. I swear he ended the first half with like 14 points, then he finished with, 15? Yeah, I don't know what that was all about. He had a great first half. Second half sucked. Expected more out of Chris Carson. Leonard Fournette just continues to do Leonard Fournette things. He doesn't have these big flashy games, but he gets the job done. He had 20 fantasy points. Continues to get high volume, 19 carries, 76 yards, 7 catches for 60 yards. Still, no touchdowns, though. These touchdowns are going to come. He has 1 in the season. These numbers are just way too, touchdown numbers are just way too low for the volume he's getting. So one of these days, it's going to come. But as of right now, it didn't. Ty Johnson absolutely sucked, and he was pretty high owned, and I don't know, the Lions pulled a fast one on us. He only ended up getting 7 carries and 1 catch, and we were expecting a lot more. Carson was getting work. It was weird. So Ty Johnson, he sucked. Le'Veon Bell, he sucks too. I mean, he doesn't suck, but he sucked. He sucked this year big time. He had 9 carries for 23 yards versus the 32nd DVOA run defense and 3 catches for 12 yards. Yikes. He is playing Miami this week, so I guess he's back in play, but I can't trust him right now. Chase Edmonds, I only put him in here just because David Johnson was out. Really wasn't that high on him versus a really tough run defense in the Saints. Ended up getting hurt, left the game with a hamstring injury, but still wasn't that great. As for the wide receiver position, I had DeAndre Hopkins as my numero uno, and originally had Michael Thomas at 2, but I took him out because I was just clearly playing up for DeAndre Hopkins, which I wish I didn't do it. But Hopkins, he was fine, wasn't like over the moon exciting, but 24.9 fantasy points, 11 catches on 13 targets for 109 yards. The volume was there, just didn't get into the end zone. If it gets into the end zone, you're going to be very happy. Unfortunately, he didn't, but it was a great matchup. And I loved his quarterback, so I wanted to pair him up with, I wanted to get the combo there. And then Kenny Stills, I thought he was a fantastic option. He came in at 53% owned. He's very high owned. He's the cheaper option on the Texans. He just didn't really do much. He ended up getting, 22 yards, 3 catches, 5.2 fantasy points. Yeah, it pretty much sucked. Cortland Sutton, he was the only guy in the Broncos since Emmanuel Sanders got traded, so I thought he'd just get there on volume alone. He ended up having 10.2 fantasy points, 3 catches, 72 yards, 6 targets. Nothing great, nothing awful either. Tyler Lockett, he had a pretty decent game. He ended up scoring 19 fantasy points, got right on the dot of 100 yards, so he got that 100-yard bonus, 6 targets, 6 catches, 100 yards. It was a great matchup versus Atlanta. You'd hope for him to get into the end zone, but still, he didn't kill you. And then Kenny Golladay, he went absolutely nuts. So he's popping up really high on my spreadsheet. He was like my number 3 highest projected wide receiver, and I thought that was a little high, but I loved the matchup. And it ended up working out. He's my number 1 ranked wide receiver just on the sheet alone, which I wish I would have listened to that. I would have plugged him in, but he was a lot higher owned than I expected. I was not expecting him to be like 30-some% owned. I thought that was a little nuts. But, he balled out. He had 1 catch, touchdown on like a weird, what was it, like a Jared Goff play on that double reverse, something like that. It was weird. But he had 8 targets, 6 catches, 123 yards, got in the end zone twice, did have a fumble, but 32 fantasy points, yeah, you'll take that. Now, Mike Williams, I just had him in there because of the price. It was a tougher matchup, but Keenan Allen was banged up, so I thought it might lead to a little bit more work. He ended up getting 10 fantasy points, and at 4K, yeah, it's not too bad. As for the tight ends, and they're okay. Darren Waller, he did not get the job done. They only had 9 fantasy points, only had 2 catches, still had 8 targets, which we love, but ended up having 11 yards. And 1 touchdown. Still got into the end zone, but at 5,900, you need more than 9 points. Evan Ingram had a pretty decent game. I believe he had 14 fantasy points. Did get into the end zone versus Detroit, so that was fine. Austin Hooper, even with Matt Schaub at quarterback, 18 fantasy points. You'll take that. 7 targets, 65 yards, 1 touchdown. Just continues to produce every single week. Hawkinson I only had in here because I love the Giants Detroit stack, and I wanted to get exposure to it, but he only had 3 fantasy points, so that's pretty much sucked. He was 3,500 at least, but still. 3 points won't get the job done. Then Jonnu Smith and Cameron Brate. So these were the cheap options that opened up late in the week. And in my main lineup, I actually had enough salary to go up to Jonnu Smith. And I went with Cameron Brate because I didn't want to double up on Titans, which I'm very upset about not doing that because I would have cashed if not, because I just missed the cash line, which sucks. But if I went Smith over Brate, who I liked Smith more, but I didn't want to double up on Titans, so it sucked. But Jonnu Smith, he was great. 19 fantasy points at 7 targets, 6 catches, 78 yards, and a touchdown. Tight ends continue to just destroy the Tampa Bay defense. So tight ends versus them usually seem to work. Cameron Brate had a pretty decent matchup versus the Titans, but he only got 6 fantasy points, so it's kind of whatever. But O.J. Howard was out, so I figured why not? A red zone threat. As for the defenses, the Patriots defense just continues to mash. Had another touchdown on the fumble recovery, 5 sacks, 1 interception, 2 fumble recoveries, and a defensive touchdown. Only get 13 points. They're just so good, and they continue to score high. Jaguars defense, I really like that as a correlation play with Leonard Fournette, because we always like pairing up our defense with our running back. And they had 15 fantasy points versus Sam Darnold, who looked awful last week, so they were fine. Colts defense scored 7, so it's kind of Chargers defense, they were great. I liked them a lot heading into the week. 2,300, I thought they were a little bit mispriced versus Mitch Trubisky, who is prone to mistakes and he gets sacked. And 4 sacks, 1 interception, 1 fumble recovery. Yeah, not too bad from the Chargers defense. And the Raiders were only on there because of the price at 1,500. I always like to punt defense if it's possible, and they got 3 fantasy points, which you'll take at 1,500 because they probably got you someone in like Barkley or whatever. So that was it for the cash game rankings. Main lineup I used was Deshaun Watson. I liked him a lot. Chris Carson, Leonard Fournette, Latavius Murray. I got my 3 favorite running backs in. Then the wide receiver position, which was giving me the most trouble this week. So I had most of my lineup made. I was playing Deshaun Watson. I was playing my 3 running backs, and I was playing Kenny Stills. And then I was playing the Chargers defense. So I had to figure out what I want to do with my tight end position and my 2 other wide receivers. And I was having a lot of trouble this weekend with that. And that's where I think I really just went wrong. So I ended up plugging in the 2 Texans receivers. I hate stacking cash, but I did. I probably should have just went with Michael Thomas so I wasn't double stacking, and then could have went somewhere else. But, I just loved Hopkins' spot and I love Still's spot. So I just played them both together, and then I had Brate. So then I went with Corey Davis. I didn't have him on my cash game rankings. I really didn't like him that much, but he fit at the end, and I didn't want to play D.D. Westbrook because I was already playing the Jaguars running back and Leonard Fournette. So I just plugged Corey Davis in because it was a good matchup versus Tampa, who was getting killed versus wide receivers. He did nothing, only had 2 catches for 9 yards. And then Cameron Brate, he only got 6 points, and Jonnu Smith, who I actually like better, he ended up going off for his price tag, and that's what really killed me. So I guess I should have doubled up on the Titans, but I don't really love doing that. So, oh well, it is what it is. So that was my lineup. I believe it scored 151, maybe something like that. Then the winning lineup in one of my single entries was Matthew Stafford, Saquon Barkley, Austin Eckler, Mike Evans, Kenny Galladay, Kenny Stills, Jonnu Smith, Latavius Murray, and the Seahawks defense. So they pretty much went with a little Giants and Lions stack with the Matthew Stafford and Kenny Galladay and brought it back with Saquon Barkley, who scored at the end of the game. So that ended up working out really well. He had 217 points, I believe. So that was the winning lineup in one of my GPPs. And then I think that's it for the Week 8 recap. We can get into the Week 9 first look lineup now. So let's make sure we can see everything. Let me just make sure when you plug someone up, you can see their names. Okay. All right, so let's get into it. So there's actually quite a few good quarterback options. Russell Wilson versus Tampa, I think he makes some sense just because of how bad Tampa Bay is versus the pass. They're really good versus the run. That's a very high Vegas total too. It's the highest on the slate. It's at 53.5. Seahawks are 6.5 point favorites. So Seattle's projected to score a ton of points, and I think they're going to struggle to run versus Tampa Bay. They've been really great versus the run this season. So I think they're going to have to pass on them. So Russell Wilson, he makes sense if you want to spend all the way up. Aaron Rodgers has been hot, but not too interested in him this week. Kirk Cousins versus KC could make some sense. Matthew Stafford, I love. Actually, we're going to plug in our lineup here. Josh Allen versus Washington, maybe. Jameis Winston, I think he's pretty interesting. They're 6.5 point dogs. This is a very high Vegas over-under. I think they're going to have to throw the ball a ton. So Jameis Winston, I think he makes a lot of sense. Only 6,100. I know he's going to turn the ball over 20 times during the game. But, he always seems to get over 300 yards and about 3 touchdowns, at least in garbage time. So Jameis Winston, he makes sense to me. Derek Carr is also in a really high Vegas over-under. It's at 51.5. They're 2 point favorites, so this game should be pretty close, back and forth. A lot of points should be scored. So he makes some sense. But for my lineup right now, this is just a first look lineup. I like Matthew Stafford a lot here. So their run game is pretty awful right now, especially with no Kerryon Johnson. So they're going to throw the ball a ton, and they're actually 2 point dogs versus Oakland. And this is a very beatable pass defense. Oakland is giving up the third most points to quarterbacks this season at 25.1 points per game. So that's third worst. They're getting shredded through the air. Deshaun Watson had a good game versus them. Aaron Rodgers just did. Matthew Stafford's been pretty hot. 32 points versus Minnesota, 27 points versus the Giants. These are 2 beatable pass secondaries. Now he gets another one versus Oakland. They really don't have a run game. They got Carson, Ty Johnson, J.D. McKissick. They're going to throw the ball a ton on these guys. So Matthew Stafford, I like his chances to ball out here, and especially if it's going to be a back and forth game. So Matthew Stafford, sign me up. I know he's a little bit pricey, but I really like the matchup here. And there's some value on the slate that we can get the job done. Now, as for the running back position, they're priced up this week. And like Christian McCaffrey, he's not in the high 8K range anymore or the 9K range. He is now all the way up to 10K. So our first 5-digit player heading into the season. So he's very expensive, and it is a tough matchup versus the Tennessee Titans, but I really don't care when it comes to Christian McCaffrey. But I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to fit him. If I could, I would love it. So we'll have to see if value opens up throughout the week. But I'm liking Dalvin Cook as my RB1 this week. So he's 9,500. I know he's super expensive, but the guy has been absolutely amazing this season. I mean, it's 27, 19, 29, 13, 30, 28. The guy does not have bad games. The only bad game he had was versus Philly, and that's one of the best run defenses in the NFL, and he still had 13 points. He has not had a game in single digits. Dalvin Cook is pretty much the safest running back in the league besides Christian McCaffrey. I like loading up on him versus the Kansas City Chiefs. They're giving up the most points per game to running backs this season, which was aided by Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams last night, but still, it still counts. They're giving up 32.7 points per game, which is most in the league. Dalvin Cook should be able to eat here. He's going to get over 20 touches. It's a great matchup. No one's going to be able to stop him. Dalvin Cook, he makes a ton of sense for me. He's probably my lock of the week just for spend up. So Dalvin Cook makes a ton of sense for me. I'm going to plug him in. Then for the second running back spot, we can go a ton of ways here. And so I'm kind of liking Nick Chubb here at 7,300. Now I know I'm a Browns fan, and I got my Browns shirt on right now. But so Joe Flacco's out for this game. So originally, the Broncos, I believe, were 1.5 point favorites. Now Brandon Allen is the starting quarterback. I believe the Browns should be favorites now at this point. I know it's on the road versus Denver, but they should take care of business versus Brandon Allen. So I think the Browns are going to get the lead, and they're going to pound the rock with Nick Chubb. They're going to make it easier on Baker Mayfield. They don't want to get interceptions. I know Nick Chubb fumbled twice last week, but he didn't fumble at all in his rookie year. He does not have a fumbling problem. It was just really wet, and, it happens. But Nick Chubb, he was still a beast versus New England, and that's the toughest matchup in the league. I'm the 49ers. he still balled out. I mean, if you're watching the game, they could not stop Nick Chubb whenever he got the ball. 20 carries, 131 yards, broke off a 44-yard run. That's when he fumbled. He's involved through the passing game a little bit too. Some games he's not, some games he is. Just depends, but he's still capable pass catcher. They're going to want to give him the ball. He is their best player. He is better than Odell, in my opinion. This is the most important piece of the Browns offense. If he gets going, the Browns get going. They're going to feed Nick Chubb. He's going to get over 20 touches in this game. I think he runs all over them. The Broncos defense has pretty much been middle of the road versus running backs this season. I know some running backs have had some pretty great games versus them. Some haven't. I know Leonard Fournette had that over 200-yard game versus them. So if Nick Chubb can get me over 20, 25 touches in this game, I think he's going to have a great game, especially if the Browns have a lead. I think he gets into the end zone hopefully once or twice. I mean, he's got huge upside. You've seen it versus Baltimore when he had 42 fantasy points. So Nick Chubb, I think he's a pretty safe play at 7,300, and I think he's got tremendous upside too. We're talking Christian McCaffrey level numbers as well. So Nick Chubb, I like him a lot. So we got some really good pieces to start this lineup. We got Matt Stafford, who's got a really high ceiling. It's a great matchup. Dalvin Cook in a fantastic matchup, and it's Dalvin Cook. He's arguably the top 3 running back right now. Nick Chubb, he's an elite running back too, and he's not priced like he is, so I like that price at 7,300 on Nick Chubb. So now we kind of broke the bank here, so we have to go cheap at wide receiver, and to do that, I like pairing someone up with my quarterback usually, and I'm telling you right now, we can't afford Kenny Golladay. I'd love to afford Kenny Golladay, but it's just not possible. So we're going to use a cheaper option in Danny Amendola at 4,700. Now, he's been okay the past 2 weeks. Now, earlier in the season, he was not getting the snap. The snap count wasn't as high. It's starting to rise now. He's in the upper 70 range. So I like Danny Amendola. He's been very involved the past 2 weeks. He had 11 targets versus Minnesota, 8 catches, over 100 yards. Didn't get into the end zone, but he still had 21 fantasy points. Last week versus the Giants, another beatable matchup. He had 8 targets, caught a late for 95 yards, didn't get into the end zone, but still had 17 fantasy points. Well, now we get a fantastic matchup versus Oakland. They're giving up the 6th most points versus wide receivers this season at 42 points per game. Kenny Golladay should have a good game. So should Marvin Jones. But Danny Amendola, he should get over 6 targets, and I like his chances to pay off value here at 4,700. And he's affordable. So Danny Amendola, he makes sense to me just to plug him in to get some salary relief. And we also get positive correlation as we're pairing him up with our quarterback. Now we got to go pretty darn cheap. We only have 43.40 left in our lineups, and I don't mind Demaryius Thomas here at 4K going up against the Miami Dolphins, who obviously suck in all aspects versus as a defense. And he's been pretty solid the past 3 weeks with Sam Darnold. He had first week he had 4 catches for 62 yards, had 10 fantasy points. Then versus New England, which is obviously a really tough matchup, had 9 targets, 3 catches, still 7.2 points. Then last week versus Jacksonville, 5 targets, 5 catches, 63 yards, 11 fantasy points. If he can give me double-digit points at 4,000 versus Miami, which I think he can, I will take that. He's going to let us get in our stud running backs. He doesn't have to do too much to hit value here. If he finds himself into the end zone, which is definitely possible versus Miami, Sam Darnold should have a decent game here. I like it at 4K, and he's been involved. His snap count's rising. So Demaryius Thomas, he makes some sense to me. And now I want to get some more positive correlation here. So we have Matthew Stafford. We have Danny Amendola. Well, if I think this is going to be a pretty high-scoring game, and so does Vegas, I want to run it back with someone on the Oakland side. So I don't mind Tyrell Williams here at 5,900, and he's been having a very solid season when he's been on the field. 25 points week 1, 15 points week 2, 11 week 3, 12 week 4, and then last week 18.1 versus the Texans, and he's scored a touchdown in every single game he's played. Look, one. He has a touchdown in every single game he plays. He's the wide receiver 1 on this team. Darren Waller is getting a ton of attention, but still, Tyrell Williams is the number 1 wide receiver. And Detroit, they're actually giving up the 9th most points per game to opposing wide receivers at 38.8 points per game. And pretty much it's just Tyrell here. I know Hunter Renfrow exists, but I'd rather, much target Tyrell Williams here. He's got the big play upside. He's seeing consistent targets. He's getting into the end zone. This is supposed to be a high-scoring game. I like running it back with Tyrell Williams if we have the Stafford Amendola. Obviously, I'd rather have Golladay, but I can't, so don't mind Amendola. Then we get Tyrell Williams running it back. So I think that makes some sense. Now we only have 3,900 left, so we're running out of salary soon. So I can't afford a big tight end this week, and I don't really love Travis Kelce with Matt Moore anyway. And then Darren Waller, he's just really expensive, and I already have Tyrell Williams, so I don't want to double up on the Oakland side there. So I think we're going to have to go in the cheap range here. And there's some couple guys here. O.J. Howard, is he going to play? I don't know. Cameron Brate, it's a really good matchup if he does play. Seattle's giving up the 3rd most points to tight ends, I believe, or 3rd or 4th. So I mean, if O.J. Howard's out, he would make some sense. I don't mind Jack Doyle here, though, at 3,000 going up against Pittsburgh. He is kind of a safe play. He's not going to have huge upside here, but he can get the job done. The Pittsburgh Steelers are giving up the 4th most points versus tight ends this season at 15.7 points per game. And Jack Doyle, he's going to get consistent targets. Jacoby Brissett has not looked too bad this season. And he really hasn't had a terrible game yet. I mean, well, okay, the beginning of the season wasn't too great, but since week 3, 8.6, 12.2, 4.9, 5.1, 10.1. That's not bad. He's seeing consistent targets too. And versus Pittsburgh, if he can get us a cheap touchdown or at least just 6 points, I will take that because he's getting us guys like Dalvin Cook, Matthew Stafford, Nick Chubb, those kind of guys. So Jack Doyle at 3K, I think he makes some sense and he seems a little bit too cheap and it's a really good matchup, so I don't mind him. Now we have 4,400 left, and now we're going to go to the defensive side of the ball first because I don't know how much we're going to have for our flex left. So let's just go to defense first. And the first thing I've been doing is just going all the way down and seeing who's the cheapest defense. And this week, it's the Redskins. And I don't want to play the Chargers. I know they're at 2K, but they're also playing Green Bay, who's been hot, so no thank you there. So the Redskins are interesting, 1,800. They're going up against Buffalo. And I know Buffalo is not bad this year, but their offense still isn't absolutely amazing. And the Redskins' defense has not been terrible at all. 6 points, especially for their prices. So 6 points, 8 points, 10 points, 5, 9, 5, 8, 2, and 0 versus Philly. But still, they are 1,800. They do not have to do much. Like last week with the Raiders defense, if they just get us 2 to 3 points, we're not going to be kicking ourselves. So we'll be pretty happy with that because they're going to allow us to get in our studs. 1,800 versus Buffalo, which isn't too scary of a matchup. I know Buffalo's probably going to score a couple times on them, and I don't think the Redskins are going to do anything huge. But at this price, they don't have to do much here. This is one of the lowest Vegas totals on the slate. I believe it's like at, I have my notes somewhere. Yeah, it's 36.5, so it was the lowest total on the slate. Washington is 10.5 point dogs, but still, I don't think a lot of points are going to be scored here. Maybe they get a couple turnovers versus Josh Allen, which is definitely possible. So 1,800, I will take that. I think that's a pretty decent value. I don't think they kill you. So now at this point, we have 7K remaining at our flex spot, and we have a couple things we can do. We can go with Aaron Jones. We can go with Travis Kelce. Allen Robinson's in a really good matchup versus Philly. They're giving up the most points per game to opposing wide receivers, so he would make some sense. But I kind of like to get running backs in here, so I don't mind Aaron Jones at 7K, and he's coming off an absolute nuclear week, and that's not the only reason why I like him. Not just because he has a good-looking game log right here, but he has a ton of upside. I mean, we've seen it, 52 points, 44 points. I know the 52-point game was with Jamal Williams being out, but still, he's seeing the majority of the snaps here. He had 64% of the snaps last week compared to Jamal Williams was at 46, and Aaron Jones actually did leave the game very briefly because of a shoulder injury. And he's also involved in the passing game. If you look at his targets this season, he's been heavily involved. 6, 1, 7, 8, 7, 4, 8. We need that for PPR scoring. So I like his. He gives you a nice floor there because of the just because he's going to be a pass catcher, and he's going to get double-digit carries on the ground. And this is a really good matchup versus the Chargers. It doesn't look like it's like amazing on paper, but recently they've been getting absolutely shredded on the ground. We saw David Montgomery go for over 100 and a touchdown last week. And they're giving up the 10th most points per game to running backs this season. This offense is clicking right now. Aaron Rodgers has been absolutely insane. The Chargers are going to have to respect the pass there. So Aaron Jones, he should have some open holes, and I think he gets you into the end zone. And at 7K, I like it. And he's got a ton of upside too, especially as a pass catcher. So Aaron Jones, he does make sense to me. And I feel really good about the running backs we have in. We have Dalvin Cook, super high ceiling, super high floor. Nick Chubb, not as high of a floor, but he's got a super high ceiling and is usually a pretty safe play. Should be able to get into the end zone. Then we have Aaron Jones, who has amazing upside. Lower floor, just because he's going to have to split some carries and stuff. But still, he's going to be involved in the game. He's a good pass catcher. So he makes sense. I love the 3 running backs we have there. And then we have Matthew Stafford, who I think has a really high ceiling in this game. Going to be a really high Vegas total. That is a really high Vegas total. Points are going to be scored. And then Danny Amendola, just a cheaper option to pair with Matthew Stafford. We can't afford Galladay. If we could, that'd be great, but we can't, so I like the cheaper option there. Demaryius Thomas in a really good matchup versus Miami. He's been seeing consistent targets. He's getting playing time, only 4K. Then Tyrell Williams running it back with the little line stack that we have. So that's good correlation. He's been great this season when he's on the field. Jack Doyle, just a really cheap tight end and a really good matchup. Then Aaron Jones, we know his upside. Then the Redskins defense, just a complete punt. Anyway, guys, that's going to be it for this video. Just the first look. A lot of things are going to change throughout the week. I'll have my core plays video coming out next. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Hope you guys had a good week 8. Hope you guys did not play Ty Johnson because that was awful. But anyway, see you guys in the next video. Wish you guys the best of luck and whatever.